Imagine this. You're barely 16 years old. You own nothing, not even your own body. And Rome, the most powerful empire the world has ever seen, wants you dead. But here's the twist. They're not asking for much. Just 3 words. I'm not Christian. That's it. Say those words, and you walk free. No chains, no blood, no beasts. But this girl, this forgotten teenage slave girl whose name most people didn't even know, she looked them dead in the eye and whispered something that would echo through eternity. I am a Christian, and we do nothing evil. And what happened next is so unbelievable, so horrifying, and so beautiful that even the Roman officials who watched it happen said they had never seen anything like it. Her name was Blandina, and this is her story. Okay, so let's rewind. It's the year 177 AD, and we're not in Rome. We're not in Jerusalem. We're in Lyon, France, or what the Romans called Ludunum, and the church is still young. I mean, we're barely a century and a half past Pentecost. The fire of the early believers is still burning hot. And Rome? Rome is furious because Christianity is spreading like wildfire, and they can't control it. So what do? They start rounding up believers, not just the pastors, not just the leaders, everyone, men, women, elderly, teenagers, slaves. If you confessed Christ, you were dragged into the streets, mocked, starved, and then thrown into the arena like entertainment. And the crowds? They loved it. They cheered. They laughed. They ate while people were torn apart. And somewhere in that crowd of believers awaiting execution was Blandina. Now, Blandina wasn't anyone special by Roman standards. She was a slave, a teenage girl, probably malnourished, definitely overlooked, the kind of person history usually forgets. In fact, even the other Christians who were arrested with her didn't think she'd make it. They loved her, don't get me wrong, but they knew her body was weak. They were genuinely worried she wouldn't be able to endure what was coming, because what was coming wasn't just death. It was days of torture designed to break your spirit before they broke your body. The Romans were experts at this. They didn't just want you dead. They wanted you destroyed, humiliated. They wanted you to curse your God, spit on your faith, and beg for mercy. And most people broke. Day after day, they tortured her. We're talking about unimaginable brutality here. They beat her until her skin split open. They tied her to a stake and let wild animals circle her, snapping at her feet. They burned her flesh with hot irons. They broke her bones, and every single time they paused, expecting her to collapse, expecting her to scream, expecting her to finally crack and renounce Christ. She didn't. Instead, she did something that left even her executioners speechless. She sang, not out of defiance, not out of spite, out of worship. She sang to the one she loved more than her own life, the one who had died for her. And she was ready, more than ready, to die for him. Now pause for a second and let that sink in. This girl, this nameless slave girl who society had written off as weak and insignificant, was enduring torture that had broken hardened soldiers, and she wasn't just surviving it. She was glowing through it. The historical accounts literally say that the more they tortured her, the more radiant she became. It was like every strike, every burn, every moment of agony was fuel for something the Romans couldn't understand. And they were baffled, completely baffled. Roman officials, Men who had seen every form of human suffering imaginable admitted on record, "We have never seen someone like her." Think about that. The empire that crucified Jesus, that fed Christians to lions for sport, that invented new methods of execution just to terrify people into submission. That empire looked at a teenage slave girl and said, "We don't understand this." But here's where it gets even crazier. The final day, the day of her execution, they decided to finish her off in the most brutal way possible. They wrapped her in a net, like you'd catch fish in, and they threw her to wild bulls, not lions, not bears, bulls. Massive, enraged animals that would trample and gore anything in their path. And as she was being flung through the air, as her body was being broken and crushed, eyewitnesses said she did two things. First, she looked up, not at the crowd, not at her killers, up, toward heaven. And second, she smiled. Let me say that again. As she was being killed, torn apart by wild animals in front of a roaring crowd, this girl smiled, and then, with her final breaths, she sang. No screams, no curses, no begging, just worship, pure, unshakable, radical worship. Rome called it madness. They called it foolishness. They called it the delusion of a weak-minded slave. But heaven? Heaven called it worship. Heaven called it victory. Because in that moment, Blandina proved something that would terrify every empire that ever existed. You cannot kill what you did not create. You cannot break what belongs to God. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds like a myth. This sounds like some exaggerated legend that got passed down and embellished over the years. But here's the thing. It's not. Blandina's story is documented. It's recorded in early church history by people who were there, who witnessed it, who couldn't believe what they were seeing. This actually happened. A teenage slave girl, whose name shouldn't even be in the history books, became one of the most powerful testimonies of faith the world has ever seen. And her blood, the blood she spilled in that arena, it still cries out, not in pain, not in regret, but in worship. So let's bring this full circle. It's been over 1,800 years since Blandina died, 18 centuries. And yet, here we are, still talking about her, still shaken by her story, still asking the same questions she forces us to ask. What kind of faith sings while burning? What kind of love smiles through torture? What kind of courage worships with death staring you in the face? Because let's be honest, most of us don't have that. Most of us live in a time where we can worship freely, where we have heated churches and comfortable seats and playlists curated to our exact emotional needs. We sing in comfort. Blandina sang in fire. We stay silent about our faith because we are afraid of being canceled, of losing followers, of being mocked online. Blandina spoke knowing she would be killed. We compromise our convictions for likes, for acceptance, for the approval of people who don't even know our names. Blandina was literally torn apart because she refused to compromise the name of the one who saved her. And that's the challenge, isn't it? That's the question her life leaves us with. If we were in her position, if the cost of confessing Christ wasn't just social rejection, but actual death, would we do it? Would we sing? Would we smile? Or would we whisper those three words, "I'm not Christian," and walk away? Because here's the hard truth. If we won't stand for Jesus when it costs us comfort, we probably won't stand for him when it costs us our lives. Blandina wasn't a superhero. She wasn't some larger-than-life figure with special powers. She was a teenage girl, a slave, someone the world had already forgotten, but she had something that most of us have lost. A faith that burned hotter than any fire Rome could light, a love that ran deeper than any pain they could inflict, and a courage that came not from herself, but from the one she worshipped, the one who had already conquered death, the one who was waiting for her on the other side of that arena. So here's my challenge to you. Don't just hear this story and move on. Don't just think, wow, that's intense, and scroll to the next video. Let Blandina's life wreck you. Let it wake you up. Let it remind you what real faith looks like. Because we live in a generation that's losing its fire, that's trading conviction for comfort, that's more afraid of man than of God. And we need to remember that the faith we claim to follow was built on the blood of martyrs like Blandina, people who didn't just believe in Jesus, they died for him. And they did it singing. If this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it lit something inside you that's been asleep for too long, subscribe to Soaked in Truth, because this isn't just another history channel. This is a place where we dig up the stories the world wants you to forget. Stories of courage, of revival, of faith that refuses to bow. These aren't just stories. They're a call to remember, a call to awaken, and a call to burn again.